Bienvenidos meus amigos for a surprise video. I'm Mr. Welch, and I've just been named an affiliate of the DM's Guild. What does that mean? Well, not much yet. I get to put a link in the description of the video, and if you click on it and buy stuff, I get a small cut. Like 2 bits. It ain't much, but it's good to be appreciated. Don't worry, I'm only going to link to books I'm talking about rather than just spam out the link trying to get you to buy stuff. So if they want a lot of links, they better crank out a lot of Mystara titles. But the actual point of this video was to convert Candlekeep Mysteries into Mystara. Consider this also a bit of a review, as I acquired a copy for review, and I didn't want to wait months before I talked about the latest release. This video is mainly for Dungeon Masters of a Mystaran bent, so there be spoilers, players. I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to book it. First off, Candlekeep Mysteries is 17 adventures with a small section prefacing the Candlekeep library beforehand. Yes, the same Candlekeep you start Baldur's Gate in. These are supposed to be mysteries, though for several of the adventures, the mystery part is slim at best. I've always been a mystery fan, though pulling it off in an RPG that it isn't designed around an investigation mechanic is tough. One of my first jobs was forensics, specifically blood spatter analysis. Not that that knowledge will pay for a cup of coffee anymore, thanks to technological improvements in the field. The actual library doesn't play much of a role in the Mystara version, but accessing the books is really easy to do in this, so don't worry about it. The books actually serve more of a framing device for the various adventures. Think the portraits in Rod Serling's Night Gallery. As always, I will be offering suggestions to replace the tired and stale Forgotten Realms monsters and locations with the fresh and original Mystara versions. First up is The Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces, a starter-level adventure that I will give major props for, as this adventure is the first one to address a pet peeve I've had since the start of 5th edition. When they talk about a monster, they put the stat blocks next to the encounter. Not for the already established monsters, but for the 2 new monsters. When you get to that part of the dungeon, there's monster stats already ready for you on that page. I don't know whose idea it was to finally implement that. God bless you, because you're the only one in the book that does it. The adventure is a first-level starter dungeon where you get trapped in a mansion that requires you to solve a riddle to get out. It's a scavenger hunt, but the encounters aren't too difficult. You can switch out some of the imps and such for plainer familiars if you want, but this one is a pretty solid adventure. The fact it's set in Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion lets you put this adventure anywhere you want. Mazfrost's Mighty Digressions is up next. You will find this adventure when a book tries to eat you. Turns out somebody's been replacing rare books with man-eating book monsters. They aren't that difficult, but the people who bought those books would really like to know where the real books are. So the party heads off to find the culprits, where they have to get a clue from one of the very rare yet quite ubiquitous tieflings in the Forgotten Realms. You will meet the villain right after that, who really wants the real books as well. You'll find the actual culprits, who are not the villains, and they're actually jackal-wares who are playing nice and selling the copies to raise money for a resurrection. If you want to make them Mystaran, there's a real nice option you can use in the form of the Adapters, a race of shapeshifters looking to acquire as much knowledge as possible. Their motivations are instead, take the book, leave a decoy book, though they don't realize the decoy books are becoming hostile. At 3rd level, you are facing the Book of the Raven, which reads more like it should be in Ravenloft. It has Vistani as an introductory element, where they are only mentioned and don't actually appear in the adventure at all. The actual plot is a standard haunted house with a lot of interaction with were-ravens. However, those are primarily a Ravenloft creature, and I have too much respect for the Domains of Dread to steal from it. So grab the Fenir from Top Ballista and you're ready to go. The adventure is pretty straightforward, if not a little underpowered, as the monsters are low-level undead. It's good for a filler adventure if you need to level up players or just kill a game night with minimal prep time. Then you've got A Deep and Crawling Darkness, where you get to explore a seemingly abandoned town. There's not much to this adventure as far as lead-up. Something drove out the people, and you're looking for answers. The monsters in this are almost exclusively meanlocks, but for maximum fun, replace them with wood imps. Lots of wood imps. Have them striking from ambush with traps everywhere. Individually, they aren't dangerous at all. In large numbers, they will have the players cursing them for days on end. Mix in garden and bog imps for variety, maybe a redcap or 2. In short, the module becomes little dudes with attitudes. Shimshime's Bedtime Rhyme is for 4th level adventurers. This time they have to undo a curse in the form of a killer earworm. First, we gotta replace the Kopru with a cool Mystara monster. For cube points, just throw in a Thanaton to be different. The rest of the adventure needs no changes, as it's a mystery to kill the unique big bad. Then you get to Fireball level with the Price of Beauty, which is the most Faerunian of all the adventurers so far. You've got 3 hags as the big bads, along with some extra planar buddies. For a deep delve, change the hags to the 3 witches from Rahazia. They've possessed 3 new smoking hot elves and are back in business. For a hoot, have Rahazia send them on the quest, especially if you ran Rahazia earlier. Replace the Cambion with a Stalwart for a kick. Stalwarts are obsessed with being physically perfect, so they don't have to change shapes, since they can pass for human to the unsuspecting. The very rare and quite ubiquitous Tieflings are now just regular elves or humans. Changing the villains will require some work, but the theme between the hags and the witches are quite similar, and reoccurring villains are tight. The Book of Cylinders is a somewhat aquatic adventure, as it takes place mainly around some swamps and coasts. There's not a lot of conversions except for the monsters. Yuan-Ti are the host villains, and they don't do Mystara thanks to our plethora of reptilian options. So let's grab some of those replacements. Move the adventure to an oasis in Yalarum. Let's give the small city of Sulba some love. Now the Yuan-Ti are Cystic, the Desert Scourge. Upgun a few for the variants, and you've got a serious threat to the party. The frog-like Gripply that are asking for the party's help are now Cayman, who want to stand up to the Cystic, but what they possess in bravery, they lack in the fact that they're only 2 foot tall each. The rest of the adventure will play out normally. Sarah of Yellow Crest Manor is a ghost story where you investigate the deaths of a noble's family and his servants. There's not a lot to change. The story's pretty basic. Investigate the murder site, head to the dungeon, kill the bad guys. Not the most original plot, but for a mystery it works. There's some grells that you can replace with Decapai. The one suggestion is to change the bad guy to a warlock instead of his stated class. Based on the story's background, it does make a lot more sense. Lore of LaRue takes you straight to the Good Kingdom. You're in a fairy world chasing after some invaders. There's a lot of Sylvan and Fey creatures running around the place. There's not much to change. The Grick becomes any one of Mystara's numerous worm creatures. If you want to change the Night Hag into a Crone of Chaos, that's fine, but hags do exist in Mystara, so that's up to you. Other than that, this adventure can slot into Mystara without changes. My one suggestion is grab the Fey section of Mystara's monster stats from the vaults and throw in some of the more obscure Fey creatures just for a cameo. Pukas, Shi, Sao, maybe some Wood Imps if you need some bad guys. They're not going to play a major part in the plot, but you gotta throw the characters a bone once in a while. With the next adventure, we are heading straight up with Candlekeep Deconstruction, as this is obviously going to be set in Serene. It's a mad gnome inventor trying to improve the architecture of the Great Library by adding vertical takeoff rockets. Instead of an earthquake rocking the city, it's a sudden lurch like the city hits turbulence. The party gets hired to find the source of the disruption, which leads to a wing of Serene's vast library. Remember, the chief librarian in Serene is a Skull Druge, which is kind of like a demi-lich, but smarter and less overpowered. And the Druge is not happy with the party's presence. The rest of the adventure is almost comical, so have the Druge follow the party. He can't hurt them, that's actually part of his backstory where he's geased into not hurting people unless they don't return books. But he can mock every mistake they make, and constantly make literary references that the party won't get, letting him mock them even more. It's a comical adventure. The bad guys are a group of gnomes with a combined wisdom score, probably in single digits. So let the party have fun. On to Zephyrium is another adventure that slots into Mystara almost without change. You've got to trap Genie, and to find him, you've got to find the wizard and stab him a lot. Again, another stock dungeon crawl. If you want to change the bronze dragon, pick out any other type of dragon. Metallics other than gold in Mystara are quite rare, but they're not extinct thanks to 2nd edition. The color of the dragon isn't important to the actual adventure. The villain is a Genasi wizard, which can be made any other race no problem, but the fact it's extra planar might let you introduce the Knights of Ebony, even though they don't normally deal with interplanar issues. The curious tale of Wisteria Vale is begging to be placed in Glantry, because this messed up tale is something that needs to introduce some of that nation's more fantastical enchantments. Specifically, we are dealing with the secret crafts of Glantry, in this case, high-level dream mastery. A powerful Glantrian wizard, possibly a prince, needs the party to go into a realm that they have created and rescue a friend that they've trapped there because of a powerful curse. It doesn't matter if the party refuses or not. They're going to discover this adventure was not a request. The constructed villagers are part of the dream magic rather than the actual constructs. This doesn't change the rules for them at all, just the creation. One bit of annoyance here is the lack of alignments in the character blocks, as it's important to the story. The fact that the target's alignment is mentioned in the text of the adventure proves that it's needed, or else they wouldn't have brought it up. Alignment, if nothing else, gives the dungeon master a guideline on how to run the monster in just 2 letters. The Book of Inner Alchemy is a pretty basic stock adventure with a wushu feel and a plot that borrows from the Doctor Strange movie. A bit too much for my taste. There's only one real place to set this in Mystara, and that's Ochalia, because the story has heavy Chinese influence. The adventure itself is beyond simple. Track down the thieves and kill them all. It's the stockiest of stock adventures, and it reads like it. with some eye-rolling boxed text that you're going to want to improvise if you don't want your players pelting you with dice. When you've got an adventure called The Canopic Being, and it's featuring a mummy lord, you know you're heading to Yalarum. For extra points, move it to the Nithian province, or possibly even Thothia on the Isle of Dawn. You know, Egyptian places. You can even run it in the Hollow World nation of Nithia, but that might cause some issues because of the heavy restrictions on magic inherent to that region. The adventure itself is a straight dungeon crawl with an ancient building that needs no conversion, as all the monsters are native or constructs created specifically for this adventure. The next adventure is the Scriveners Tale, and this is a fairy slap fight from the very start. This one also requires a lot of conversion because it is very much set in the Forgotten Realms. There's an exiled Unseelie about to finish her punishment, and another Unseelie doesn't want to see that happen. The problem with this adventure is that the Forgotten Realms Fae and the Mystara Fae are radically different creatures. The party is racing to get to the final destination where they can destroy the MacGuffin tied to the exile Fae, who has also cursed them to ensure their cooperation. The setting doesn't really matter as long as you have a large city nearby. Replace the Fomorians with Bargda, and the Death Slot with either Malfera or Mugina, as the other high-level Fae is pulling out all the stops. You get the book to the end, the high-powered Unseelie pops out, and then you fight to the death. The end. Alcazar's Appendix has the party traveling to a blasted wasteland to help bring us all to rest. For this adventure, we're going to a place we've never been before. The Great Northern Wildlands, northwest of Glantry. What's there? Nothing, besides the adventure. It's never been written about in any source material, and it only ever appears on maps. Well, now it's got a roaming nomad culture and a half-buried golem. Why are the PCs there? You're the DM, not me. That's your job to figure out. Quick substitutions, Rakshasas become Randaras, and the Schwingas gain the spirit tag. The big bad of the adventure is a Dracolich, which is possible in Mystara, but might I suggest a Drolem instead? You know, the Frankenstein dragon, because that's so much cooler. Finally, we get to Xanthoria, and it's a 16th level dungeon crawl. I know what you're screaming at your computer right now. Shouldn't an adventure that high be more than just go into the dungeon and kill everything between room 1 and room 11? Why yes, my listeners, it should. 5th edition's common complaint that high-level adventures play exactly as low-level adventures, only with monsters with more hit points, is a very valid criticism. As far as adventures go, since it's just a dungeon crawl, you can place it anywhere. Ignore the ties to the demon lords and just kill everything from start to finish. Most of the monsters like Vrox are just close approximations to the unique fungal monsters, so you don't have to worry about replacing them. If you want to throw in a Ducino or a Fungoid for flavor, knock yourself out. Then you figure out how to kill the bad guy and you win the adventure. Yay. That's all of Candlekeep's Mysteries. It's got some great adventures, and it's actually got some bland ones. The good outweigh the bad by a large margin. Even the ones I called bad are more uninspired or derivative than unplayable. Most of them fit into Mystara without much effort. Mostly monster swaps and setting changes. You're not going to play them as a campaign like Dragon of Icespire Peak. Just play the good ones and ignore the dull ones. I love the first adventure putting the stat blocks next to the encounter. So more of that, please, people. The lack of alignments was annoying since they were largely mentioned in the text anyways. And replacing the 2 letters for alignment with 10 lines of motivations for the major NPCs wasted a lot of space. It's not a mind-blowing book, but it is a useful book for Dungeon Masters. But now I've kept up with the releases in a timely manner, something that I was lacking in the past. I would post up a link for the book now that I'm affiliated, but you need to get this from your friendly local game store. They need your money more than I do, now more than ever. I will add links for all the monsters I mentioned from Mystara in the description, but remember those stat blocks were rough drafts, so be gentle with them. But until next time, did I ever tell you about the second time I was covered in someone else's blood?